There are 4,218 PS2 games, and I'm beating every one of them. I've got to own the game because I'm playing everything on the original hardware, but I've beefed it up with a RetroTink 5X, some component cables, and more to come soon. Can I do this before I die of old age? I hope so. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom was developed by Heavy Iron Studios and released in October and November of 2003 for the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. It would later be released by Vicarious Visions on PC and Game Boy Advance, although changed quite a bit. The game received scores right down the middle, holding a 70 out of 100 on Metacritic, and was mostly a commercial success. Can I beat this original SpongeBob adventure? Battle for Bikini Bottom is probably the most popular SpongeBob game on this console generation, at least it seems like it is. I mean, it's a really solid game with a fun premise, and a lot of people talk about this fondly. I mean, sure, the other ones as well, but this one just seems to be brought up more often, especially since there was a remake of the game, which is the rehydrated version, one that my son has played quite a bit, and I have also played quite a bit then. And this game is, it's a simple, fun game that anyone can pick up and play for a little while. And the premise itself is Plankton, as usual, is trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula, or at the very least, take over Bikini Bottom, which is something he tries often. And so he makes a bunch of robots. But in his haste, he forgets to turn on the lever that has the robots obey him, for some reason leaving it in the don't obey position. So those robots go haywire, and a robot version of himself is controlling everything, obviously not obeying him. So SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy have to save Bikini Bottom from the robots, and even Plankton. The controls in this game are simple. You've got a jump button, and then everyone can double jump. Sandy can also hover in the air with her rope. For some weird reason, she can hover. Everyone has an attack, as well as a ground pound of some sort, and can use a special ability. SpongeBob can use things like the cruise bubble, which will shoot a bubble, and you can control it from a first-person perspective. He also has the bubble bowling. Patrick can pick things up and throw them. Sandy can lasso enemies and kill them instantly. So it's a lot of stuff that you can do with each character, although it's, pretty simple. You go through each level, and the whole idea of the game is to progress through each area, gathering together one of 3 different objects that you can collect throughout the game. You've got shiny objects, which is your biggest collectathon thing. Those are really just to unlock stuff like Mr. Krabs giving you golden spatulas. You can pay him to give you golden spatulas. You can use the shiny objects to unlock doors or unlock clams, and that's pretty much it for those. Then you have the socks, which are Patrick's socks. Every time you collect 10 socks, you can bring them back to Patrick, and he will give you a golden spatula and the golden spatulas, which are the only way to progress in the game. It's kind of like Mario's stars. If you collect the stars or collect the golden spatulas, you can progress further in the game to different areas. And each area has about 8 golden spatulas to collect. In general, you'll be collecting them to unlock new areas. You don't have to collect them all. I believe there are 100, and in the end, you only need to collect 75. So you can leave some for later or just never to get at all. So, whatever you want to do. But that's the game. You'll be going through these stages and collecting these things and using all these moves and eventually getting to the end of the game. So let's start the journey here. SpongeBob starts in his house, and this is like a nice little tutorial. It gives you a lot of different things to test out, like buttons to slam on, things to jump on to bounce you up in the air, even this ball to roll around on. You can gather a couple socks and a couple shiny objects, and even 1 golden spatula. Leaving your house allows you to visit Patrick, Mr. Krabs, and Squidward, who you can annoy enough to get you both a sock and a golden spatula, which is very nice of Squidward to get us out of his hair by giving us stuff. On top of Squidward's house, there's a special pair of underwear, which is your health, by the way, underwear. This one is a golden pair of underwear, though, and will give you an extra whole health to have throughout the rest of the game. I believe you can have up to 6 health. You start with 3, and so at the very beginning here, you can collect this to get 4, which, feels like they should just give it to you, but they're teaching you how to look for these things. And then on his house, you get a free golden spatula. Our first accessible area is Jellyfish Fields, and it requires 0 golden spatulas, but it does contain a bunch for you to get, so you can go to the next areas. In this spot, Squidward gets stung by a bunch of jellyfish, and he wants some jellyfish jelly, which will stop the stings from hurting him. So you've got to look around this area for both golden spatulas and the jellyfish jelly, which will just get you another golden spatula. At the very end of the stage, you get a special mini-boss that you'll see a few times. You'll see mini-bosses and bosses in different areas, but this stage, not all stages have mini-bosses, just this one and a few others. Once you're in a stage, you will find the robots and the machines making the robots. If you destroy the machine, it will stop making the robots, and then you can kind of clear that area of bad guys, but they always respawn when you both die and when you leave the area and come back. So, you know, it's not like necessary to kill everything, although you do get the shiny objects, which helps you open things in the future and get more golden spatulas from Mr. Krabs. But each level works kind of like this. You've got several areas in each level, and as you progress through the stage, you can then teleport to these areas so that you can revisit them. Because just like Mario 64 or many of the other platforming action games, you collect in a level however you want. So you'll collect the golden spatulas in whatever order you possibly can, and you're given that freedom, which is really nice, honestly. You know, you can just explore to your heart's content until you find what you need, which is great for younger kids, such as my son, who loves just exploring to find things, and I always encourage him to continue to explore. The socks that you find for Patrick are hidden around the stage as well. Some of them are kind of difficult to find, others are very obvious, but those are even more of an exploration reward, which is great. And then you find little events like this where you've got to destroy these machines and hit the buttons, and they will get you further in the level. This one actually gets you the ability to use Patrick. So once you unlock Patrick, you can then go to a bus stop and change into his character from SpongeBob to Patrick and Patrick to SpongeBob. Then some levels, of course, will give you Sandy once you unlock her, but you can only switch between Sandy and SpongeBob or Patrick and SpongeBob, as is SpongeBob has the most moves and is practically the main character, I suppose. So every time you go through a part of the level, it's pretty clear who you need to use for each part of the level to progress. Like this spot right here needs Patrick to pick up robots and throw them at these objects in the water to then reveal a golden spatula you can get to. No one else can pick anything up and throw it, although you could, if you wanted, wait until SpongeBob gets his rocket ability way further in the game. However, it's just simple to do this. I mean, it's not like a hard quest, so waiting until then is not necessary, but you could do it if you wanted. Throughout your travels, you'll find familiar characters who give you little quests. Each level has maybe a main quest that you're looking for, but then everything else is a secondary quest that still gives you important items like golden spatulas. In this stage, the quest, of course, is to help Squidward, and to do that, we need to find the King Jellyfish, who is in the middle of taking a shower. He's our first mini-boss. He has 3 health, and he's very simple. You need to jump over his little electricity wave he shoots out and smack him. When you do that, you get a health taken off him, and there you go. Eventually, he'll summon some little jellyfish around the area, but you can pretty much ignore those to just jump over his attacks and hit him. And he's a very, very simple boss. A great simple boss, though, honestly. It helps you learn to jump over things and to take things slow. A type of game that you'll do a lot is sliding down these slopes, and there's actually a whole level dedicated to almost doing nothing but this type of thing. These are controlled pretty well. It's a little difficult sometimes being able to fall off and die so easily, and there's socks hidden around these areas pretty well, so you've got to look for alternate paths, and sometimes they'll hide a golden spatula there too. Looking for alternate paths is difficult during the timed versions of these slopes, but this one isn't timed, so you can take your time, die as much as you want, who cares? In fact, all throughout the game, dying really isn't a big deal. When you die, you pretty much start over from very close to where you just were, and with most things saved. I mean, you practically don't have to do anything to get back to where you were, except walk forward and then repeat what you did, which is very, very little, so it's very forgiving. Here in the pause menu, you can see all the golden spatulas. If you found the quest for a golden spatula, it will show a silver spatula. You can teleport there in an attempt to try and get the golden spatula. If it's gold in the menu, you've already collected it. If it's a question mark, you can't teleport to it and you don't know about it. It will tell you nothing about it until you reveal it as a quest. And generally, revealing them as a quest is just getting to the area where that golden spatula is located. Some characters talk to you, sometimes you see it, sometimes the game will zoom in on it. Regardless, once you see it, you can teleport to it and attempt it when you're ready. Downtown Bikini Bottom is the first place we go to that requires us to have 5 spatulas, and at this point I have practically 10 spatulas already. I know this game really well from helping my son. So, I walk around downtown Bikini Bottom fighting some new enemies. Before we fought regular robots that kind of just ran at you, There are some here that look like little UFOs that have a bunch of arms. You've also got to dodge this hot sauce on the ground, which is from the episode where Sandy tries to pour hot sauce on SpongeBob's tongue, which is great. The main quest in this one is you're supposed to be helping Mrs. Puff find all of the steering wheels to all the boats so that everyone can escape all of the robots, because the robots, of course, are ravaging town, and no one can leave until they can drive. Although SpongeBob's not allowed to drive because he's such a poor driver, so all he can do is collect them for everyone else. I don't even know if I do this quest. There are many more easy golden spatulas to collect other than this one, so there's really no reason to do some of them. I mean, you can figure it out for yourself, but some of them are just harder to do, and so you just leave those ones for later. We finally unlock Sandy in this level, so now anytime in the future we can change to her, we can change to her. We can use her to use these little Texas signs in the air to swing across, otherwise no one can get across except for her. And once she gets up here, she's the only one who can be on top of the rooftops, where she must replace Larry's antenna. During this period, you'll also collect some more golden spatulas and socks, and then you come back and hopefully you can get to the next area. There's also these special magic cardboard boxes, which is from the Imagination episode, and if you find 2 of them, they can teleport you back and forth, although if you found both of them, most likely you're already having a teleport in the pause menu to where you need to go, so there's not really a reason to use those. I barely ever use them. I wish that we could use Sandy as a character more in a lot of the levels, because she is honestly the best character. Being able to lasso any enemy and kill them instantly is wonderful. Being able to hover in the air is also really cool, and then swinging between the Texas signs is kind of fun. She's just a really good character and would honestly be the best character for the entire game, if not for SpongeBob's extra abilities they clearly made for the whole game. But, you know, whatever, you get to use her for a few levels. One section of this level has us destroying all the machines that produce the robots, and each time you destroy everything on one level of this thing, you then fall to the next level and destroy the next set. Obviously, it gets harder the lower you go, eventually getting you a sock and a golden spatula, so if you can figure out where those machines are, you can fall directly on top of them, destroy them before having them summon any robots, and it's really simple. Alright, next is the beach, and on the beach we have the main quest of helping Larry turn these reflectors on to these different lifeguard stands, because there's a robot on a pile of boxes, and I'm not sure what this has to do with anything, but apparently the robot on the pile of boxes far in the distance needs to be destroyed, and the only way to do so is using these reflective things. Otherwise, most of this is just finding random golden spatulas around the level. Although you do have to save these kids holding onto balloons. I guess no one cared about the kids' well-being, but these kids are on these balloons flying around the place, and if you save them, you save 5 of them, Mrs. Puff gives you a golden spatula. Eventually, we're kind of in a cave in the beach, and we have to bump these different platforms around, find our way through this waterlogged area, which you are not allowed to fall into this deep water, apparently. They can't swim in this deep water, which I guess makes sense in some fashion. I'm not sure how it does, but once you get through this area, you get another golden spatula at the very end of it, and a couple socks. We also get to a carnival at the other side, where we can use Patrick to do things like the whack-a-mole game to get a sock. He can also throw these ice cubes on the water to freeze it, where he can then run through and hit different little platforms until he finds his own golden spatula. He's the only one able to do it because of the throwing ability, so you gotta get him down there to do it. The whole idea for collecting the golden spatulas is to get to 75 spatulas. This will allow you to progress different parts of the outskirts of Bikini Bottom, where SpongeBob's house begins. Then the next area has the Krusty Krab and the Chum Bucket, and then the next area has a few more places you can visit. And if you go inside the Chum Bucket, 75 will get you into the last boss. So once you progress through those areas, you get more areas unlocked. Each one contains about 3 or 4 different stages that you can go to, and that's kind of how you make your progression. And each time you do this, you will unlock a boss. This one is a Sandy robot, which King Neptune has you fight in this arena. Not all of them are like this, but this one's pretty simple. You use SpongeBob at first to hit Sandy with a couple butt slams into the ground, but then eventually you have to use Patrick. It's no longer enough to just ground pound and hurt her. You now have to pick her head up and throw it into this broken down sign that has electricity flowing through it, and that will damage her. Each boss will follow a simple pattern. They have 9 health, and every time you take 3 of their health off, they'll reach the next form. Sometimes that means a character switch to Patrick or Sandy, but in the end, the very last 3 health they have will always be fought by SpongeBob. and in this case you need to head bop Sandy's head at the very bottom when she takes her head off, and it will deal the last damage to her. Alright, now that we've defeated the boss, we now have access to more levels, but we still need the golden spatulas to even get to them. But before we do, we explore this area and we find some helpful items. After we grab some shiny objects and some socks, we go talk to Barnacle Boy and Mermaid Man, and they let us into the Lair. Lair has a couple difficult challenges, and this is where we get the bubble bowling, and we use it a lot. We use it to bowl the bubble across the ground and hit these little pinwheels that you're supposed to make rotate around, but sometimes it's very accurate. You have to hit it specifically in this very small spot to make it go. Otherwise, it just doesn't go. And sometimes I get confused. I'm like, wait, am I supposed to be hitting these because they're not moving? And then suddenly I'll finally use one to hit them. Plus these buttons, they're really hard to hit, especially on some of the platforms that are moving. It requires you to bowl a bubble on a moving platform, and the bubble will veer off because it's moving. This one's also a little bit difficult. Every time you hit a button, a couple of these will turn around, and you need them all to face the center. Obviously, every time you hit a button, they'll just turn from either facing you or facing outward. You have to find the correct pattern to get them all to face inward. For a kid, that might be kind of difficult. I don't know, I mean, this is pretty much just trial and error, do it over and over until it works type of thing. But once you get the pattern down, you can get it. Okay, so this puzzle is ridiculous, and I do not see how any kid is going to be able to do this in any sort of like manageable fashion. So what you have to do is you have to guide this ball down a track by using your bubble bowling, your butt slamming, and just general being in the right place to make this ball hit the end of the track to reveal a golden spatula. The problem is that your margin for error is really freaking small, man. You've got to be right on point, accurate, and timely. Otherwise, you're just not gonna make it. And it took me almost 20 minutes to do this puzzle, and I just want to say real quickly that I have done this puzzle about 50 million times because my son plays the rehydrated version, which the rehydrated version is easier. They made it a little easier because obviously it's pretty tough, man. I mean, as an adult, knowing how the puzzle works, I had issues. Now, at the very end here is the biggest part, is being able to get the ball to roll on this little tilt pad quick enough and then come over here and put your ball into the windmill button to knock it out. It looked easy when I did it, but you just have to be so fast, and if you miss one bubble bowl, you're done. You're done, man. You just miss it. So even knowing the puzzle and doing it a million times, I still had a lot of trouble doing it, and once I did it, I was like, God, thank God. But the nice thing is you don't have to do it. Again, you only need 75 out of the 100. We get our next mini boss, and this one is Prawn, and he just kind of sits in the middle here. You've got to jump over his little attack thing that he does here, I guess with sound, and you got to step on these platforms when finally they turn to red and blink all over the place, allowing you to bubble bowl into him. So you just got to be quick and a little bit accurate, and once you're able to do it 3 times, he's dead. It's not a terribly hard boss. After this, I have enough spatulas to get into Rock Bottom, which is the episode where SpongeBob gets stuck after riding the bus too long, and he's in advanced darkness. Obviously, Mrs. Puff has taken some drugs in this scene, and she's supposed to be scared, but it's not going well. And there is a museum down here that she needs you to collect the paintings for some reason. I don't really know why there's an artwork museum down here. I don't remember that being in the show, but hey, you know what? We gotta find the paintings. And that's not even the big part. Really, there's just a lot of challenges in this area. We also get a cute little callback to the bus scene with him trying to grab the candy bar, which is probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole show. There's a couple of them like that, but this one is just really good. So I'm glad that they have a homage to it. Once we're inside of the museum, there's actually a bunch of lasers everywhere we have to slowly deactivate until we can get out of the top of this place. Barnacle Boy needs us to do it. I'm not really sure why. I don't remember what he wanted or why he wants us to do this, but this is not familiar to me for some reason. There is a special pickup for SpongeBob that turns him into a ball that rolls around. You roll much faster, but it's a little harder to control. So the whole idea is to try and get some speed going so you can get to where you need to go and then pop out of it so you have more control. But it is difficult to round corners, and I always find myself flinging myself off the side of the map. And these little time sections do make it difficult to get to where you need to go. As you can see, I'm just bouncing off of shit here. After this, I check out Sandy's dome, and I have to get rid of these robots while she's trying to fix a crack in her dome. So once we do get a free golden spatula for it, which is nice. Next, we head off to the next level, Sand Mountain, which this one is all about, as I said before, doing the races down the slopes. Now you have time limits for most of them. Some of them just have checkpoints you need to reach. They're very, very long, but the ones with time limits are freaking difficult, man. I mean, you have to hold forward to go faster or backwards to go slower, and if you're holding backwards at any point, you're probably not gonna make it. These time limits are very unforgiving for some reason. The hydrated version of this game, the newer ones that my son was playing, they're a little bit more forgiving, but still, I don't even know why there's a time limit. I mean, just make it difficult for kids and make it checkpoint wise. I mean, I just don't see the point in making a time limit for this when you're stuck to the track. There's only a very few set of shortcuts you can take, and for younger kids, it's gonna be hard. I mean, that's kind of the demographic for this game as far as I can understand. I mean, I'm doing a good job here, but again, I've played this about 50 million times for my son, so it's very familiar. You must do several of these tracks, one for Mrs. Puff, one for Squidward, one for Bubble Buddy, one for Larry, and all of them have different time limits and checkpoint maneuvers you gotta do, plus some cool obstacles to get out of the way of, like these spikes, falling boulders, just stuff everywhere. And then you have to try and destroy some of the robots for Squidward, although I think as long as you just destroy some of the robots and finish these places, you'll get all the golden spatulas fairly easy. Okay, I've gathered enough spatulas to move on to the next portion of Bikini Bottom. However, I have to fight a boss first. This one is Patrick Robot, which my son loves to fight, but he's difficult. See, in this game right here, and even in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game, if you are hit by the boss during one of his attack phases, such as the spinning one right here, he will reset his attack pattern. So you must take 0 damage. Otherwise, you don't get to the portion where you can damage him. See, as he gets dizzy, he falls down on the ground and you can go smack him in the back. But if he resets, you don't get that opportunity until you wait again and then dodge all of his attacks. The next portion of this boss battle is with Sandy, and the only way to get to him, because he's got a bunch of this green goo around him, is to jump on the Texas signs and make crates fall onto the ground. He can break them though, so you just need to continuously jump back and forth between them, making them fall so that when he does get dizzy, you have one close enough to even hit him. Otherwise, you're just watching his back sit in the water somewhere you can't even get to. And if you land in the water again, you're gonna take too much damage. There's only so much health around the level. This last portion is the hardest one because you need to dodge all of his attacks, and at this point there's very few places to actually stand. And if he hits you, like I said, he will reset his entire attack pattern, meaning that you're not allowed to hit him. You've got to bubble bowl your attack at him, so you just need to dodge all of these little particles come down, and they do stick on the ground, which it's so hard to dodge these sometimes. You just jump around and hope for the best, and if he hits you, just try and dodge again. After we beat him, we're allowed to go into the Krusty Krab, and for some reason, it's full of robots. And this spot is like a little puzzle. I don't understand why they have it like this, but it's extremely difficult. Everything in here can like home in on you. There's rockets, there's lasers, and there's the robots up there that you can sneak by. Sometimes you can hold down a button to sneak, or just hold the control stick very slightly, and you'll sneak around. These guys cannot see you if you sneak, but there's very little of an area to actually get up there and sneak. So you get caught unless you do things in a specific order, which is climb up the rafters, beat the robot machines, then beat the robots, then climb slowly across the rafters, where you then drop down on top of them and kill them before they see you. It's kind of a difficult part for an adult. Okay, we now have unlocked the cruise missile, which is a pretty cool ability. You shoot this rocket and you're controlling it from a first-person perspective. You have several seconds to control it before it blows up, which does still damage enemies around it when it blows up. It's kind of like the SpongeBob movie game, which you'll see soon. So it's a very familiar ability if you've played either this one or the other game. And it's a fun ability, I suppose. You use it for the pretty much rest of the game. You use it on the last boss and everything. It's a helpful ability. After collecting some spatulas and another pair of golden underwear, I move on. In the very middle of town, there's a set of stones, and I didn't realize this at first when my son was playing this because I hadn't played this until the rehydrated version. But if you stand in the middle of those stones and press a button, you go into SpongeBob's dream. I don't know why it's like that, but it's not obvious that you can just go into a level by doing that. It doesn't tell you until you walk into the stones and stand still and then press the button. But this level is, of course, a dream stage, which means nothing really makes sense, and there's tons of weird and crazy perils all over the place, including these moving cubes with spikes on them, tons of slides and very interesting dreams you'll go into of everybody in town, including your own, which I guess this is technically your part of the dream. You're dreaming about their dreams. And there's actually a lot of difficult parts to this one. Sliding down the slides is not easy. There are enemies posted at very awkward parts of the level, making you use the cruise missile to take them out from a mile away before you get there. Otherwise, there's just no chance. I mean, I worked on this one really hard during the rehydrated version with my son, and on this one it's even harder. Obviously, they have more quality of life improvements in the rehydrated version, so this one is just a difficult version of the game. Here's Sandy's dream, which is honestly not too hard of one. I mean, the slides are kind of small, but since she can hover in the air with her lasso, it's really not hard to get around this place. I actually like Squidward's dream level. It's got a lot of musical instruments and things you'll land on, notes on a scale and stuff like that, which is pretty fun. It's not difficult as much as the next one I'll talk about, but it is fun, and it's maybe more difficult for kids because of the timing of jumping and bouncing. You've got to be really careful. Okay, this is the one. This is the hard one, and this one was even hard and rehydrated. So what you have to do is you're on a grill, and there's patties floating in the air, and the patties have a machine on them that is shooting out the robots. You have to kill the robots here. And every time you kill a certain number of robots, or a certain set of them, I don't even know, it slowly makes the patties deconstruct, and it will make little stairs for you to jump on. When you jump up them, you can break the machine. When you break all 3 machines and kill all the robots on the grill, you will get your spatula. The problem is that until you start destroying the machines and then killing the robots off, they will get summoned over and over, which is kind of crappy because, again, you are just constantly under attack. No matter where you go, there are missiles, fire, and rockets and stuff like that coming after you all over the place. And it's just chaos. My son constantly asks for my help in this one. And if I get too low on health, there's almost no point in going on because one stray hit while you're not paying attention kills you. This one takes a good 10 or 20 tries to actually get correct. Alright, moving on, I get to the Kelp Forest, and this one's pretty simple. You go around the Kelp Forest and you find campers. They're up very high and you've got to find them. They're lost in places that don't make sense. And after you find them, Mrs. Puff gives you a free golden spatula, which is cool. This next area needs you to collect 3 tiki heads to hit 3 buttons to let you go on to the golden spatula in the next area. However, I decide to cheat by throwing 2 of the tiki heads on top of each other, skipping the 3rd one, and just jumping off of them up to the golden spatula. If you place them just right, you can just jump right up past it without needing to get the 3rd one. And there is a lot of platforming in this area, and you need to throw the tiki heads across different platforms and find the way to get them across, and so I just was like, you know what, never mind that. Just get 2, stack them, and jump up there. This section is actually really difficult. You've got to take SpongeBob and Patrick, you gotta switch between them, and you're finding these crystals, these gems or something like that, and you slowly open up different areas of these caves, but you have to do them in a certain order, and you have to figure out what you need to hit to raise a platform up or to open a door, and it takes a long time just to figure out what you need to do. I actually never did this part. My son and wife did this together, so I didn't recognize this. So when I was doing it, I was just trying my best to figure out any way I could get around doing some of it, but you have to do all of it. Buttons are hidden in cages, doors are locked, and there's just some really interesting ways to progress in this cave. This is also one of the hardest slides, in my opinion, in the game. In the rehydrated version, it's even harder, in my opinion. See, in this game, the air is kind of clear. You can kind of see the next area you're coming up to, although the turns are extremely tight, and you have to rotate the controller all the way around. So when you're controlling this, you need to slow down to be able to do tighter turns. So if you just push forward and then rotate all the way left and to down, you will get around those tighter turns. The problem is you don't know when you have to do that. All the turns are of varying degrees, so it's difficult, and it's long, man, and with a time limit, it's so annoying. But in the rehydrated version, this entire area is full of kelp, and it looks pretty, and it's cool. I'm glad they did that, but it makes it harder because now you can't see what's about to come up. It's just a surprise. Alright, I collect all the golden spatulas there, and I get to the ship graveyard with the Flying Dutchman, who needs us to help him clear robots off of his ship, and that's cool and all. So I go around this area, and I don't even really do the main mission. I think you actually have to fight the Flying Dutchman, but because I collect the golden spatulas in such a way, I don't really need to fight him. I just say screw it, I don't need to fight this mini boss, and I move on. In fact, instead of fighting that mini boss, this is what I do. I farm for shiny objects to give to Mr. Krabs to get the last couple golden spatulas. And to do that, there's this part in SpongeBob's dream, in Sandy's dream, where you can just continuously teleport to it and make all of these tiki heads that contain the shiny objects reappear. Because you get a super mega ultra combo, you get a decent number of them. So I'm able to keep switching to SpongeBob, blowing them up and getting the combo and getting a ton of these pieces so that I can just keep getting shiny objects and buy them from Mr. Krabs, which makes the end of the game a little bit easier for me. Hilariously, at the last boss, Plankton tries to make them obey him by, instead of turning the switch up to obey, just writing a note and putting it over the top of the don't obey part and thinking it's going to work. I don't know why they had him do this, but you know, it's funny, it's sure. So this last boss is actually fairly difficult. You've got to hit all the green buttons on the SpongeBob bot, and he will do various attacks you must dodge. Obviously, some of these you need to use the cruise missile to reach, otherwise you can't reach him. Every time you hit 2 of them and knock his health down a bit, you have to then hit Plankton, who will come up and try and hurt you. Now this is robot Plankton, of course, so when you hit him, it just hurts him a bit, he leaves, and then you've got to dodge some more of your SpongeBob's attacks, and eventually he chases you from platform to platform using karate, but not just karate, but also the words karate will come attack you. I don't know why that's what they chose, but it's very interesting. And this boss is fairly difficult, one that my son took a while to get used to, but now loves to fight all on his own. It is a hard boss, especially in this version of the game. You have very little margin for error when he's attacking. You have to turn back and forth very quickly between platforms. You have to jump, because if he hits the platform you're on, even if you've jumped, it's still gonna hurt you. The platform flips around and will smack you, so you gotta be careful. Simply beating the robot is not enough. Instead, you come to this section inside the robot where you must dismantle him. You have to go through several different areas where you have to destroy a machine, spawning robots. Then you have to break a small coil that will allow you to get to the next area. Once you get through about 5 of these, you then have to fight Plankton a few times and break some more of these wires that will eventually power down the robot. And this one it's a long section of a level. You only have this to do with small platforms and jumping pads and dodging. That's pretty much it. There's nothing else to do. There's nothing else to collect. All you're doing is using everything you've learned in the game to try and stop Plankton and the robot. They make it so that you have to really hit your shots, because if you miss one time, they can screw you over. I mean, I keep missing Plankton here until finally I hit the dumbass. He moves around in a fashion that makes it hard for you to control the rocket to go into him. And as you can see here, the rocket must practically hit something directly. The explosion doesn't hurt objects, not like it does enemies. You must hit it directly, otherwise it won't break it. Killing the robot and finishing this last part of the level is the end of the game. Plankton decides to just let the Plankton robots replicate themselves, but because they get in fights and arguments, they are never able to figure anything out. The robots kill each other, and that's the end of the game. Unless you want to get 100%, which then technically allows you to say that the game is over? I don't know. We beat 100% on the rehydrated version and nothing really happens except for, saying I beat the game 100%. Otherwise, you've saved Bikini Bottom from all the robot menace, and now the game is over. That's it. Battle for Bikini Bottom is over. Game number 83 complete. This was a fun game, and I know I went over it kind of like rapid fire, I feel like, although it's still like a 30-some minute video, mostly because I'm very familiar with this game after having played the rehydrated version. So, I mean, yesterday I played it with my son, and this is weeks and weeks after I beat this game already. So he still plays it and likes it, so I have a lot of knowledge of this game. And this game is kind of fun. It grew on me after a little bit. I like the open-endedness of each world, being able to explore, find socks, shiny objects, and spatulas at your own pace. Once you find enough, you can move on. There are roadblocks with bosses and stuff like that, which is fine. I think that makes sense. You gotta take what you've learned over the time you've been playing and put it to the test against a boss. And once you beat the boss, you can then go back to having several levels where you find more spatulas. You can go back. This is very much like Super Mario 64's established 3D collectathon worlds, which is wonderful. They did a wonderful job in that game, and I love how it's set up. And because of that, anytime I play a game like that, it's just immediately a fun time. And this one controls pretty well. There are some janky bits here and there, maybe some weird hitboxes and things that can kill you too quickly, but otherwise, it's just a fun time. If anyone wants to play a good SpongeBob game that's easy to pick up and play, this is the perfect one to do so. I'd give this game an easy 8. So, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for everyone in the stream who came to watch, although I didn't need the help because I already knew this game so well. Thank you so much to everyone who has a membership to Patreon, YouTube, Twitch, anything. You guys are making it all possible to get these games. Of course, I know I say it all the time, but who cares? You guys are so helpful, and I appreciate it so much. I didn't know anyone would ever be interested enough to help the channel out. I just wanted people to come and have fun. So I appreciate it so much more than I can even express. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching this video. I'll be back for game 84 soon. Later.